right, and we're live. We're live everywhere. We're live on the Discord stage, we're live on Twitch, on YouTube, and Media.network. And we have a special guest tonight. It's Mr. Kuleen from Solana Labs. He's a business developer. I'm super humbled. I'm very honored that we have him here. Might drop us some Solana Alpha, but also we can see how someone from the inside views the ecosystem. So thank you so much for coming here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is super exciting. I'm a big fan of Grape, of the sort of Whales Friend podcast, the Twitch stream, everything. So really excited about this. This will be fun.
Very honored, very honored. Since you're a fan of Whales Friend stream, the market seems that it has bounced. What's your take on this? Are you optimistic? Are you feeling bullish, bearish? What's your take?
Yeah, so as a rule, I try not to comment on markets. Like you'll notice on Twitter, for example, I basically never comment on market activity because I don't think I have a particularly differentiated view. But so my take on this, right, not investment advice, et cetera, like is that I'm a long-term crypto bull. So like my bias is just always bullish. Pretty much without fail. Markets have bounced. That's pretty good. I guess I lean bullish. I think there's a few reasons for that. One is that, when you compare the activity in the ecosystem that's going on now versus what happened in 2018 when things crashed, like it's completely different. Like the private market fundraising environment is still like really hot. There's a ton of interest. I mean, you saw FTX's raise. People are still building actively. Some people are sad that coin values have dropped, but I think the general level of activity and stuff that's getting built is just vastly different from what 2018 was. So from that perspective, I think it's a promising sign. Obviously, like prices can get disconnected from what's actually going on in the ecosystem for a long time. But I mean, it's better to have real activity than not. So that has me leaning bullish. I think the other thing is, yesterday there was some pretty suboptimal commentary from the US government on crypto. I think that's not great. It looks like, the markets kind of didn't respond that poorly to it, which is actually a good sign. Generally, like I guess the rule is that if things don't tank on bad news and rally a lot on good news, like that's a sign that people are looking for an excuse to go along, which is kind of what it seems like we're in now. Anyways,
Definitely agree with your view. It's a matter of when, not a matter of if. I'm also on the permabull, long-term permabull category. So yes,
exactly,
definitely agree on that. But yeah, other than the market, we should start from the beginning. You need to tell me your story. How did you end up working for Solana? How did you connect with crypto in the end of the day? Like, you need to tell me take it from the beginning.
Yeah, totally. So for me, I think crypto first got on my radar in like 2013, 14, like whenever that first Bitcoin kind of pump was, when a bunch of people were trading it. But at the time, it didn't really click. I kind of just put it in the sort of shelved it in the back of my mind. And then in, I think early mid 2016, I somehow stumbled across Ryan Selkis's blog on Medium, or Two-Bit Idiot, as some people I guess know him by. And I forget how I ran into this, but whatever. I started reading it, and like he was basically making the point for Bitcoin, or making the case for Bitcoin, and I think that clicked for me. Reading that blog, it sort of a switch clicked in my mind where I was like, okay, I think I understand why having this sort of non-governmental, non-sovereign store of wealth that sort of has fixed supply and is very independently controlled and very difficult to break, like why that's a valuable thing for society to have. And so that's kind of how I first got into crypto, when I first bought Bitcoin. And then 2017 happened, and there was like this crazy market cycle. And then through the course of 2017, I was kind of monitoring the space. And actually, before I get into that, maybe one thing I'll say is, before Solana Labs, I worked in traditional finance in New York. I worked for an investment firm called Two Sigma Investments, which is like a pretty large quantitative hedge fund. They do a bunch of stuff now, but that's kind of their core business. And so that's where I was, in 2016 and 2017. And so in 2017, I was at Two Sigma. We saw crypto prices rise a lot. And at Two Sigma, like, because we're a pretty well-known finance firm, a lot of crypto VCs pitched to us. So a lot of people kind of raising their first crypto funds pitched to us. And so I got to hear a lot of perspectives from these investors. And, they were interesting conversations. I would say that even then, like, I wasn't, like, the use case for smart contracts and like building this sort of completely decentralized internet, I sort of could, thought it was interesting in theory. I had a hard time necessarily seeing it compete with just the existing Web 2 and centralized services like AWS, et cetera.
Back then, certainly.
Back then, exactly. Like, some people had the vision, right? Like Stanny with Ethlend, like building it then, but could see this future. I couldn't at that point in time. But I did get to meet a few really good investors, including the Multicoin team. And so that's when I started sort of tracking the Multicoin team, which is how Solana got on my radar. And then, things kind of simmered down in the crypto world in 2018, 2019. But, starting in early 2020, and then of course in the summer, with DeFi summer is when like the potential for DeFi and smart contract platforms really clicked for me. Like, as I started using Uniswap and Aave, et cetera.
That's summer 2020, right?
2020, exactly. So, pretty recently in the scheme of things. And so then, once you're a believer in the long-term potential for DeFi, then the question you ask yourself is like, okay, where does this get built? Like, what's the right place for the world for us to build this kind of decentralized future? And then you can say, obviously, like, Ethereum has this massive head start and they're trying to solve their scaling problems, but like, there's a lot of complexity in that, and like a lot of unknowns in how this actually pans out with respect to like Polygon versus these other layer 2 solutions, rollups, et cetera. And then, you have something like Solana that was sort of built from the ground up to just be extremely scalable at the base layer. And so like that idea sort of made a lot of sense to me. I already heard about Solana, from following the Multicoin team back when I met them in 2017.
The Multicoin team was an early investor of Solana, right?
Very early investor.
Yes.
A pretty, significant proponent for our ecosystem. And, I think a really, really sharp team. If you don't follow Tushar and Kyle on Twitter, you should definitely do so.
I definitely do. I think everybody out there should follow.
Exactly. And so just, I guess, to finish up the story, I also then got to see Anatoly, the founder or one of the co-founders of Solana, on a podcast or two. And I was just like so blown away by him. Like, I think he's like this mix of like technically brilliant, but also like has a vision for what this decentralized future could look like. And it's just like a really fun, nice guy. And so I was like, okay, like I would work for him. And so that's how I kind of settled on Solana. And then I got connected to Anatoly through Kyle at Multicoin, and that's how I ended up here.
And at the moment, you're located in New York, or you've moved somewhere else?
No, I wish I was in New York. New York is where I spent 5 years before this, and I love New York City. I'm in Chicago now.
All right, that's where the Solana Labs headquarters is. How does it work? I mean, what exactly is Solana Labs? Like, you need to tell us. What's the difference? There's a foundation, and then there's Solana Labs.
Yeah, it's kind of this weird distinction. So the way to think about it is like Solana Foundation is kind of, most crypto projects these days have foundations because of, I think, mostly like regulatory reasons. But whatever, so there's a foundation, and the foundation's mission, so Solana Foundation's mission is primarily to, make the network, the Solana network, like as decentralized and censorship resistant as possible, to make it something that can be really trusted to handle the future of finance and having like all the world information on it, right? So really make this something extremely trustworthy, decentralized.
And you said that's the foundation.
That's kind of the foundation. Yeah. And so Solana Labs is basically this entity that, our mission is to basically build adoption of Solana, the protocol. And so there's like some, linkage between the foundation labs. I'm actually not super, I don't fully understand what that linkage is. So I won't get into that, but like, I think the important thing to call out is like the missions, right? So Labs' mission is we're trying to, build the ecosystem on Solana, and then foundation is really focused on let's build a network that's truly decentralized.
Yeah,
And
I
I think
see.
most of the kind of Twitter activity, if you will, from people like me or Raj or Anatoly or whatever, I think most of it is from like a labs perspective, but it's kind of a mix.
Is it a big team? I mean, do you interact with these people in a daily
Yeah,
basis?
yeah, pretty much. I think so. The team is, call it 70 people at Solana Labs, and the team is kind of a mix of. I think it's mostly engineers, and so when you think about the engineers, it's like most people are kind of focused on kind of core protocol engineering, right? So what does it take to make Solana even more performant? What does it take to be to make it even more easy for the network to be decentralized so that validator requirements come down, et cetera. So how do we incorporate the latest and greatest in cryptography into Solana? So that's kind of core protocol engineering is like a big chunk of the engineering part of Solana Labs. And then there's a component that's more product facing. So for those of you who have had the fortune of talking to someone like Bartosz, who is I forget his Twitter handle is like Bala something.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't remember as well.
yeah, I don't remember exactly, but anyways, I suspect a lot of you in the audience have probably talked to Bartosz at some point in time.
Like
He's
Belazemon,
one of
something
these.
like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, Balazamon. Yep. Uh, so he's 100x engineer. He's also, but he's not doing so much the core protocol engineering. He's doing more of like helping teams build their products on top of Solana. So more of like the product and smart contract engineering side of things. And so that's kind of the two big buckets in engineering. And then there's sort of the BD or the business side, if you will, of Solana Labs, which is really like marketing and BD and basically everything that isn't actually just building the protocol and smart contracts on top of it. And
Building
that's kind
the
of where I sit.
ecosystem, though. Building the ecosystem and
Exactly. Building the ecosystem, doing partnerships like the one that we did with Lollapalooza this last weekend. So, and I think some people have probably seen some photos from the event. We sponsored the music festival, and part of that was like we had our name on the stage, the kind of EDM stage,
pretty
which is
awesome,
really
right?
awesome.
Like that was pretty
Yeah, it
awesome.
was
Getting the
amazing.
EDM stage, especially, that was the most awesome thing.
Exactly. No, we know our audience.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Was there an Affix Twin live? No,
sorry.
there was like there was no Affix Twin this year on Lollapalooza. Okay, maybe next year. Pretty
Yeah,
cool
I
though.
mean, I
Pretty
think
cool.
Lala this year was a little weird because they're trying to figure out how to manage the event with respect to COVID. But I was lucky enough because I'm in Chicago and the event's here. A
So
bunch
you
of the Solana
attended?
Labs team
Wow.
came in town. I attended. Yeah, it was quite the insane experience, and also just to see people walking around with the Solana summer shades was
So
was
did you
really
get
unreal.
one from the festival?
I have multiple, yes. Unfortunately, if we're on video, I guess I could put it on, but yep. Oh yeah, I have a bunch of these, and some other Solana swag as well. And what's funny actually is that uh, it's actually not that easy to get Solana swag even inside Solana Labs,
I've tried so
for
hard to
reasons
get
that I
Solana
haven't fully
swag.
understood.
I've
Yeah,
tried so hard. Like, yeah.
don't worry, it's not just you. Even I actually have like, there's tons of stuff that I don't have, but hopefully in the next few months I'll be able to get it.
Did you notice what happened today with the Pit Viper official Twitter account?
I did notice this one I can't comment on,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
obviously. Like,
Um,
we understand totally.
yeah,
But wow. Let's see.
yeah, it's a very interesting situation.
I think it's gonna become good news.
No comment.
I love it. I love it. Okay, then since we can talk about the Viper campaign, maybe we can talk about the Solana season campaign. What's the story behind this campaign? Who came up with it,
Yeah,
and
this is such a great
how does
question.
it work? How do you plan these campaigns? And maybe you could leak some alpha for the next one. Maybe we can start preparing a little bit earlier. You know?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So it's actually funny enough, like I was wondering this too. I just forgot to ask. So I don't know what the story behind the name Solana season is. Um, like who came up with it on the team or for someone from the community or exactly how that came about. But obviously it's worked pretty well for us and I love the theme. So in terms of how we plan events and what's coming up, so I think it's interesting. So Solana Labs as an organization is like very decentralized. And each person on the team has a lot of autonomy in what they want to do. And so like a lot of things actually don't happen in this very centralized way, like where there's like this big master plan and then we execute to it. A lot of things it's like, hey, we have like these things that we want to accomplish vaguely, and then people on the team have ideas and just go run with it. So in the case of the hackathons, it was really an idea from I think the first person to really push it forward was Maddie or Matty Tay on our team, who's kind of our head of growth. And he was just like,
Nice.
hey, hackathon seemed like an interesting idea. And so he's, basically tested it out as an experiment. Like, hey, we could start running hackathons. And he tested this, the first one was late last year. And we had two. So we did the first one late last year, the Serum one earlier this year, and then the kind of largest by far was the Soul Season hackathon that happened, 2 months ago. And so it really started as like an experiment of like, hey, is this an interesting way for us to engage the community to get people to jumpstart building on Solana, get these projects some visibility, some funding through prize money. So that's kind of the origin story. And a lot of what we do is kind of like this, where it's like we test out an idea, and if it gets traction, then we like go run with it in a big way.
But did you
Um,
expect this kind of participation? I mean, from both
we
sides,
did not expect. I mean,
from the
to give you some sense,
sponsors,
right?
from the sponsors to the teams, like and the prizes, everything was record high.
It really was. No, I mean the hackathon blew us away in terms of what happened in it in multiple respects, right? So one thing that really caught us off guard was just how many people signed up. So we had something like 13,000 people register to participate in the hackathon. Our stretch goal was like 10,000 when we launched it. We were like, if we get to 10,000, like we'll be so happy. And the fact that we blew past 10,000 was just like amazing. So that's one. Just like really amazing participation and people from all over the globe, right? So it's not like it was just European people or just US people or just Southeast Asia or just China or something, like very geographically distributed, which is
Yeah, it was
amazing.
awesome. There were prizes for Africa. There was for
There's
every
prizes for
place.
exactly
Bravo!
for
It was so
everywhere.
inclusive because we were looking out for this. It was like, okay, are they going to include everybody? And they did. It was really awesome. Like honestly, so many people were happy that they felt represented.
Yeah, no, it's very important to us to to make sure that like Solana, because it is a global and fully open thing, that like there's no reason that we should only focus on specific regions, and like there's talent everywhere. And I think one of the really powerful things about crypto is its ability to give that talent wherever they are an opportunity. I think like the traditional job market, for example, it doesn't really do this anyway. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but yeah, it's like very fundamental, I think, to what we're doing to make it as global as possible. So yeah, the prize pool participation was amazing. The number and quality of the judges that we have is also awesome. And then I think finally, like the quality of the projects, like there were just so many. When I was talking to like one thing I kind of did when the hackathon was happening is like I would just look at people's submissions, like what they submitted on the type form when they were signing up, and if it seemed interesting to me, like I would just reach out to them and chat with them and like kind of learn more about what they're doing and who they are. And there's so many of these conversations that I have that I would just like leave and I just kind of have just be flabbergasted, just like, wow, this this person, this team of people built what. And the one that's most memorable, I saw that Irvin from DeFi Land was in the Discord earlier. I don't know if he still is or not, but the one I distinctly remember was my first call with him about DeFi land in the hackathon. And like, I think I like yelled in laughter at some point because
That's
then he
so
told me later
amazing.
on, he's like, Colleen, like your laugh, like I can remember it. Like
That's
I can, it sticks in my mind. It's because I was just so blown away with the stuff that he and his team were doing.
Yeah, I'm talking to
So
them tomorrow, so I hope because I have so many questions about
yeah,
them. It's hard to understand this extra layer in
it's
between the gamification layer.
it's really incredible, like the vision they have and what they've come up with. So anyway, so that was the final thing, is just like, man, people built some really, really fucking cool stuff. Um, and it was something like we had no idea about, right? So I think initially in the early stage of Solana, like Solana Labs kind of knew about pretty much everyone who's building something on Solana Labs, and there weren't that many of them. And then now it's gotten to the point where like, we in many cases we are like the rest of the community. Like we find out about stuff through Twitter, and then we're like, wait, what is this? And then you go and you poke around, and you're like, oh shit,
That's
right? So
pretty
like I don't know,
awesome.
like Solana Monkey Business with their launch with NFTs yesterday, right? Like I've never talked to the team. I found it out about it kind of like the way everyone else did. Um, so
Yeah,
or like DGen, Ape Academy, like there
yeah,
are many examples.
yeah. The previous week was a crazy NFT week for sure. I didn't expect what happened yesterday with the Solana Monkey business. Amazing. They sold out.
They
Uh,
sold out. Yeah, it was yeah,
yeah, I have
quite
no
crazy.
edge
And
in
I mean, it sold
NFTs.
out an hour later because of like their website went down the first hour they were supposed to launch because of all of the inbound.
Ooh, that's pretty cool. And there was okay. We spoke about the hackathon. That's a past event. Can you give us maybe? Is there anything else
Oh
coming
yeah,
in the
that's right.
horizon?
Sorry, the second part of the question. What's coming? So, um, given the success of the last one, we definitely are going to continue on it. In fact, there's a hackathon going on right now that's more India focused. We recently brought on someone on the team who's like um, kind of trying to be or not trying, but is the sort of Solana India lead, just because, India is a massive market in many respects. And so what we're trying to do is basically try to focus as much as we can and do region specific things for such areas as, India, China, Southeast Asia, South America, et cetera, et cetera. And so India is just the first one that we've kind of found the right person for. So that's going on now, but that's not really alpha. In terms of looking forward, right? So there will be another kind of global hackathon coming. Timing for that, I would say if you look at the amount of time that's happened between our previous hackathons,
Yeah, about three
that should
months.
give you some sense. Yep, exactly. Yep. Right. So that's maybe if you like to use past data to train your models for what's going to happen in the future,
Yeah,
you can sort of
yeah.
form some conclusions.
So your
Uh,
you didn't tell me. So your background is in finance mostly.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, so my background is in finance. Yeah, not and so I used to work. I started my career in management consulting, which is like this thing where a lot of people graduate from college and they don't know what they want to do. They go into management consulting, and in management consulting, you do projects for various companies, and they ask you questions like, "Oh, like what markets should I enter?" or like, "How do I make this line of business more profitable?" or something like that. So, anyways, I did that for 2 years. That was also in New York City. The firm I worked for, I ended up working for a lot of financial services clients, like a lot of banks and investment companies and insurers. And so I sort of got some background in finance that way, and then realized that like I didn't want to be in consulting all my life. And so as I was thinking about what to do, found this role at Two Sigma Investments, which, as I mentioned, is like a large kind
Yeah.
of quantitative hedge fund. Um,
It was easy to
with
understand that you have a finance background. The little phrases you use kind of give it away.
oh, give it away. Okay, yeah, I guess so.
Back to the hackathon. Anything that stood out? Anything that disappointed or excited? Someone that won or lost and was unexpected? What he made afterwards? I don't know. Maybe anything
Yeah,
that kind
it's
of you. Any good moments?
for sure. So in terms of what stood out, I think that one actually is not so easy to answer. Like, I think all the prize winners deserve what they like. Were really strong teams, and like deserve to win. I think the challenge is actually that like there are other teams that also deserve prizes or deserve to be shortlisted that didn't make on the list. And I think so. What ended up happening is kind of one feedback point that I have, for ourselves from this hackathon is that like we need a better system for evaluating. We have like over 400 submissions, and so it just becomes like hard to objectively evaluate all the projects against everyone else and like figure out who should get the prizes. It's just like a very
Yeah, it
kind of
must be even hard to
large and thorough
categorize
problem.
the projects.
Exactly. Yeah. It was just like, it was a lot of work. I mean, that week I remember like I just blocked out, 3-4 hour chunks in my day just to go through the submissions. And, we had a bunch of judges, so it's not just me, right? Like I was doing it mostly actually just to understand what people had built. But you have a bunch of judges. The judges are very busy people. And so like, it's not clear to me, I doubt every one of them was able to look through every single project to the level of depth that would have been ideal. So it's something we have to figure out is like, how do we do this better? I think we did a pretty decent job. There's a few projects that I think like
Like
did a
who
great
who
job.
didn't
And
win and deserves a shout out?
yeah, exactly. So there are two names that come. I'm sure there are others. I'd have to go look back, but the two that come to mind immediately. One is SoulStake. Right. So SoulStake, something you might be familiar with, just like a really like a good staking platform for people to stake their soul with, and they had a focus on sort of user ease. I think if I remember correctly, I don't think they got a shout out, and I think they deserved at least that. Especially because like some of the code that they made open source was later used by other projects that I'm also a fan of, right? Like staking.io used some of SoulStake's code to build their staking platform. And so I think SoulStake basically deserves a shout out, at least for like building some open source stuff that's been very valuable to the community broadly. And then the other project that comes to mind is Investin, which is like an Indian team that's basically building like a decentralized fund management protocol. And in the hackathon, they actually built something that might even have been mainnet live during the hackathon. I can't remember exactly, but I think that was also like a strong team that actually shipped code that should have gotten at least a shout out. I think in those cases, like those are examples of things where just with all of the projects that we had to review, it was hard to make sure that everyone who's quality, got the attention that they deserved. And I'm sure there are others that I'm missing, but those two come to mind to me.
But does Solana Labs have any expectations from the projects that win? Like, do you guys secretly hope
No.
that they're gonna go further, or
Oh,
is it?
yeah, totally. I mean, we don't secretly hope that they go further. We very openly hope that they go further, and we try to do everything we can to help them do that. Like a lot of my job actually, it's interesting. I guess my title, even though it doesn't really mean that much, is like business development at Solana Labs. And so I think when you think business development, you often think of like going around like trying to drum up business, essentially like sales. And my role is actually doesn't end up being that almost any of that. Like there's so much inbound interest in Solana that most of my time is actually spent in like helping teams that want to build on Solana be successful. Rather than like trying to go convince people to build on Solana, I do almost none of that. And so a lot of what I do then is like work with these hackathon teams, post hackathon to like figure out how do you actually go full time on your project? How do you structure an entity if you, need to do that, to issue a token, to hire a team, to market your project, to do community development? Like there's so much
Just
that
like
goes
Grape.
into having a successful project.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just like
Grape,
Grape.
I've had the pleasure of working with you guys. And exactly. So that gives you some sense of like
Yeah, it's
the thing I love most about my job is actually that part of it is working with teams and getting them to be successful. It's what I, get the most joy from, and it's what I try to do the most of.
and it's such an honor to be supported by Solana Labs. The main entity behind the protocol, the development of the protocol. So it's really motivational, being like if you guys are actually, just giving the thumbs up.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, so it's an interesting balance for us to try to strike. Like, we like the community is more than capable of figuring out who's quality and who's not. Like we don't want to press our thumb on the scale and be the entity that's like telling you, this is a good project, or like we're not trying to make winners either, right? And so it's this balance that we have to strike of like supporting teams, but not like being like, hey, this is the lending protocol that you should use, or like this is the NFT project that you should go ape into, right? Like we want to, as much as possible, help everyone who's serious about building without like playing favorites.
Without
it's
really
kind of a tricky balance.
confining them in your mission. They let them loose, let them build whatever they think is best.
Exactly.
That's a great way of decentralizing your ecosystem.
Totally. And we've made so much progress on that. It's incredible. Like I think now we're basically there. We're like, even if I did nothing and Solana Labs did nothing, like projects would still be building, still be growing, which is what we want to see. And now at this point, I think our role now is not so much about it's more about speeding this up. Like I think speed is very important in crypto. And so we're really here to basically increase the rate at which the ecosystem gets built, not so much like I think it would get built regardless of our existence.
But what are the steps you take in order to evaluate a project and then backing it or helping it or devoting even your time? Because even if you get on a call with someone, that's opportunity cost.
Totally, and that's actually the most scarce resource for not just me, but like the Solana Labs team collectively is like just time and attention. Like I feel so bad. Like there are many people, and I'm sure there's probably some in the audience who have had to deal with this either from me personally or from like someone on the team where like there'll be a question in a Telegram group directed to us, and like we won't respond to it for days, sometimes weeks, because every morning I wake up to like 300 Telegram messages or something. Like it's a little challenging to keep up with everything, and I do my best to do it, but sometimes I'm slower in responding to some people, mostly because like I miss stuff given just the volume.
How many people in your team, the business development team, are responsible for answering to all these Telegram chats?
Sub in the ballpark of 10 people.
Oh wow, okay, you're not enough, guys.
So it's not like we have this massive team, and there, yeah, so it's probably 10. Obviously, there's also, we have a bunch of community managers on our Discord who are amazing and do a great job of answering questions there. But yeah, it's not a huge team, and that's part of the reason why like sometimes we'll be slow. It's because there's just a lot going on. So yeah. Anyways, that's on the Telegram. I forget, what was the original question.
The original question is how do you evaluate a project? How do you get to back a project, or even give your time to a project?
Totally. So what I care about, and a lot of it is actually informed by I think Anatoly's perspective on this, which I found to be really good. Like, so one big characteristic is the phrase he likes to use is like teams that are willing to eat glass. So what I mean by that is, building on Solana today, it's actually much easier than it was even like 2-3 months ago. It's still not as easy as it is to build on Ethereum, right? Ethereum has a 6-year head start. You have much more tooling, much more like many more community resources, better documentation, more documentation, etc. And so it's just easier to do. On Solana, like we're catching up as rapidly as you can and making a lot of strides there, but it's still not as easy. And so what that means is that like the people who are serious about building on Solana, like one important trait to have is like you have to just be willing to power through some of these difficulties and be really persistent and work hard. Right. So that's one big thing that like we look for is like, who are the teams that are just gonna push through and power through because they believe in their vision and like care so much about what they're trying to do. So that's a huge one. It might even be the most important thing.
So team and the momentum of the team, the character of the team, and the all right, not the actual product is like, oh, I love that.
Yeah. So product's important, but honestly, the thing in crypto is that like product visions and ideas can shift so much so quickly depending on like what is going on in the market and developments in the ecosystem. So like the product thing is a little more flexible, and so like the thing then you have to trust like is this a team that cares enough to shift their product when it's needed? And so that's why, so team and their character is sort of, I think, number one by far. And then the next thing, yeah, so like, product is an important thing, right? So you want to build something that like actually makes sense to build on in crypto, is like a valuable service to the ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. So products sort of the next thing, but I think there's tons of good ideas in crypto. So that one actually ends up being not such a great filter, just because like there's so many things I come across that are like, yeah, good idea, good idea, good idea. At least,
Yeah, execution is
good and
important.
exploratory. And exactly. So execution is the next thing, right? So execution honestly is pretty related to the team character piece, because the teams that really care and work hard and like push execute well. But yeah, execution basically means like, are you shipping code quickly and frequently? Are you on top of it in terms of your community management, right? So some teams will, their Discord, like your question in the Discord get answered like within 15, 20 minutes or faster. And they get answered 24 hours a day. Right. So do you care enough about like engaging with your community? Do you care enough about shipping code frequently, about being open with your roadmap, et cetera, et cetera? Like, and so that's the kind of stuff we look for on the execution front.
Very sensible things, I have to say. Very humane, very normal.
Yeah, this isn't rocket science. At least I don't think so, right? And so these are the characteristics we found to be like really good signal in terms of like who's actually going to build something great.
Are you going to Lisbon for the Solana meetup?
Oh yeah. I mean, so with Lisbon, right, the asterisk is it depends on what happens with a lockdown situation, and if the Delta variant becomes a big thing, and unfortunately right now we're kind of trending in the direction that's not good. And so, if Lisbon can't happen, so Lisbon's going to happen unless lockdowns prevent it from making sense. And so right now we're planning for success. We want it to happen. We're planning for it to happen. And if we're lucky enough for that to happen, I'll be there 100%.
It would be super awesome because
great.
Obviously we are also going to be there, myself and the co-founders of Grape. So I really look forward on catching up and having some beers.
Exactly. Yeah, I think like the event itself during the day will be a lot of fun. I think the event venue is going to be quite a unique thing as far as conferences go. I think there'll be some fun stuff after sort of the official activities of the day. I've never been to Lisbon, but everyone I've talked to who's been there has told me it's an amazing city. So like, it's gonna be great.
It's gonna be Grape.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Hell yeah.
Indeed. I really look forward. Like I have to meet so many people from this space. I've interacted so much with, and in the end of the day,
exactly.
The Solana family is quite small. Like
Totally.
It's not like the Ethereum community. We are still very few people. We're gonna go in the conference. We're gonna be like one big crew. It's I so look forward to that moment.
Yeah, it's in the Solana community, I would say, is in this kind of nice stage right now where it's not so big that like you can't like everyone kind of gets lost in the crowd, but it's not so small that it's just like a literal handful of people. There's constantly new people coming in and new perspectives coming in, so it is this sort of honeymoon, I would say, size right now. And so yeah, that part's great. I think Lisbon will be a great way to celebrate that. I think in the future it might not be that way, right? Like we may get to a point, and I mean, obviously we're aiming to get to a point where there are millions of people using Solana, and then the community will become a little bit harder to track.
It's going to be harder, but yeah, the OGs are going to be there to support. And,
yeah, exactly. We'll still be here.
And yeah, and the clearer Solana shows what requires for the network to be successful, I'm pretty sure that the community will do whatever everybody can to support that and to build towards that direction. So some direction from Solana is always welcome, so we can all help.
Look, the direction from I don't want to speak on behalf of the entire team here, but my view is the thing you just gotta build fucking great products that people love to use, and you do that. I think Solana is a really good protocol on top of which to do that. Obviously, if you do that, everyone will be happy and successful, and the world will be a better place because we built some cool stuff. So like. And that can take many forms, right? So one thing I actually been spending a bunch of time on is gaming, right? Like I think if you look at blockchain gaming today, almost across the board, the games themselves are not as high quality as traditional games.
Yeah,
Like the
no
mechanics are
AAA
not as
studios
crisp.
are developing blockchain games. Maybe Star
Exactly.
Atlas is though.
Even indie studios. Well, we can get to Star Atlas in a second, but even indie studios, if you compare indie studios on traditional games versus indie studios basically indie studios and traditional gaming are still much higher quality games. Obviously, though, like there's some exceptions. So Axie Infinity is probably obviously the most notable one. Like they have done something truly incredible, and because they built something that like hundreds of thousands of people really enjoy, and actually on top of enjoying, like can earn a living from, which is just absolutely nuts. So. You just got to build more stuff like that. So whether it's in gaming, whether it's in DeFi, whether it's in NFTs and like, coming up with novel use cases for NFTs, like there's just so much that can be done. I think you just got to pick like the specific use case problem that you want to solve and then just relentlessly pursue that. Like that's as much of the guidance as I'll give, because to my point earlier, like I don't want to constrain people's creativity or like the missions and what they want to accomplish. So
Makes absolute
the only thing I'll
sense.
say is,
Speaking
yep,
of a mission, I see there are lots and lots and lots of people that have gathered here. Also, my very good friend Dean Papas is next to me. Dean Machine, you've spoken to him for sure.
yep.
And we should head over, I think, to go check do the raffle with Sol Lotto, since we're speaking about things that you can't give direction to build towards. I see lots and lots of people are gathering for the raffle. They want to see if they're going to be in the poker tournament or not, because we can't have spots for everybody. Unfortunately, we can have up to 200 players. I wish we could allow everybody to get there. Maybe we'll find a way in the near future to allow everybody to get there. But it's been quite some competition for those 200 seats. And unfortunately, some people are going to have to stay out. Want to join us for the raffle?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got about 15 minutes, so I'm down to hang out.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if you need to leave, I mean, don't no pressure here. I mean, it was super lovely speaking to you and understanding what's the role of Solana behind the hackathons, behind supporting projects, what's required in order to actually maybe get the attention of Solana if you're building something. And we learned that there is a hackathon coming as well. And from the timeline,
Yeah,
what's going to be October?
Yeah, actually, if I can make just one final comment, and after this, actually, I probably will hop because I'm starving and I want to get some food before my next meeting if possible. If you have questions about Solana, or if you're interested in building something on Solana, or you're already building and want to get in touch, like, please do message me. I think my Twitter handle is in like the announcements from Grape, so like feel free to DM me. My DMs are open. I do my best to respond to everyone. It's not always the fastest response, just given volume, but I really like this is something I care about, so I do make it a point to try to get back to people. My
We'll
inbox
we'll help
not
on
yet.
this one. We'll direct your way anybody who's actually looking for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and thanks so much for having me. This was a ton of fun, and I really love what you guys do for the community, just generally.